It is probably the most famous nail polish ever. There are countless stories about how this nail polish shade was developed, and it also impacted the beauty industry and also the nail polish industry like no other product. Let's talk about Rouge Noir. Rouge Noir, the famous black-red shade by Chanel, was officially launched in 1995, and it was kind of an unexpected success, and a success that actually created a big hype. It also stirred up the beauty ideals, what was deemed appropriate to wear in terms of nail polish color. And it was also the very first time that a brand cast spotlight on a product like nail polish. Before that, nail polish was kind of an afterthought. It was not something that a brand would actively advertise. It revolutionized the beauty, but also the fashion industry. And as interesting as these facts are also the tales which were spun around Rouge Noir and its development, I'm going to look into some of them, and spoiler alert, I'm also going to debunk some of these myths. Just as a side note here, this is a non-sponsored video. I'm just sharing my personal opinion and my research here, and everything is alleged and for entertainment purposes only. This particular topic was actually suggested to me by Super Jacob, and I'm very grateful that he drew my attention to this really interesting backstory of this iconic nail polish. Super Jacob also talks about luxury and fashion on his YouTube channel, so I highly recommend that you also subscribe to his channel. I linked his account in the description below. And in general, if you have topics that you find interesting or that you want me to talk about, feel free, drop it in the comments below, send me a DM. I'm always happy to hear what you are interested in, because ultimately I make these videos for you. And if you're new here, welcome, my name is Liz. I talk about luxury and fashion once a week on this channel. So if you're interested in learning more about fashion history, the fashion business, or fashion events, come on over, join the fun, and subscribe to my channel. Now, what is Rouge Noir? Rouge Noir is French for red black, so it's a literal translation. This is exactly what it is. It is this very dark shade of red, almost black, and this actually goes back to Mademoiselle Chanel herself. As you may know, Chanel worked a lot with black and white, but in addition, she said the only other acceptable color is red. And in an interview with American Vogue in 1926, she herself mentions a certain type of red, a shade which is very dark, which reminds her of the inside of a cherry. And this is actually exactly what this Rouge Noir is. If you have a very ripe cherry and you open it, it's on the inside, usually not a bright red, it's this very dark blackish tone of red. And Chanel included beauty and makeup already very early on into her business, because she started with beauty and makeup already in the 1920s. And the nail polish goes back to the 1970s, when the company launched a lipstick, and alongside this lipstick they launched nail polish. Since then, Chanel Beauty has been a big part of the Chanel business overall. It's so important to the brand that they even have separate stores just focusing on beauty, cosmetics and makeup. So we can already see that Coco Chanel was kind of a visionary also, not only when it comes to fashion, but also the beauty industry. How was Chanel's iconic Rouge Noir created? There are countless tales around the development of this particular shade. Some are true, some not so much. And I have to admit, it also took me some time to do the research and filter through what is true, what is not so true, because a lot of these articles and videos, they reference each other without fact checking. That's not a particular problem here. This is an overall problem when it comes to publishing articles. This nail polish has become so famous. It even has its own Wikipedia page, but even on that Wikipedia page, not necessarily everything is true. So just one side note here, when you read articles, when you go on Wikipedia, you can't assume that everything is 100% correct. Also fact check, look into the sources to just also verify if everything you read is true. So what is the story? The then creative director of Chanel, Karl Lagerfeld, wanted a new nail polish shade for one of his collections in the 1990s, and he asked two people for help, Dominique Moncourtois and Heidi Morawetz. Moncourtois was hired by Mademoiselle Chanel herself in 1969, and he joined the makeup department. Eventually he became the international director for makeup. Before that, he had worked as professor for makeup at the Film and Theatre Academy, and during his time Heidi Morawetz joined Chanel, and she eventually became the director of the makeup creation studio. According to the myth, the then creative director Karl Lagerfeld wanted a new shade of nail polish for one of the campaigns he was shooting in the 1990s. And it had to happen fast and it had to be dark. So what Moravec and Moncourtois did, according to the Smith, was they painted the nails of the models with red nail polish. The famous Chanel red was already in the product portfolio. And then they used a black marker to make it darker. And then they used a transparent glossy nail polish over it. This is the myth. And then for the fashion show, they mixed shades of red and black to achieve this signature black-red shade of the Rouge Noir. So we have to admit, if this was true, it would be a very cool story, and we know that stories also sell products. But it doesn't mean that it is necessarily true, because when we look at the creation of Rouge Noir, it soon becomes clear that some of the things are actually a bit vague. For example, most of these articles talk about a particular campaign or collection, but they actually rarely mention which one it actually was. Most likely it was the Fall-Winter 1994 runway show, which took place in March 1994. So my issue is, if I see some inconsistencies in stories, I keep digging and I want to know more. So I did some research and then I discovered a very interesting YouTube video by LRS who did a lot of work on this particular topic. I also linked this video in the description below. So she said that she looked into the campaigns because the articles either mention campaigns or collections. So first of all, she looked into the campaigns, Fall-Winter 1994 and also the Spring-Summer 1994. And she says for the campaigns themselves, it did not look as if Rouge Noir was used because when you look at the fingernails, they seem to have like a nude nail polish on them. But then she discovered an advertisement for Chanel No. 5 from 1994, and it looks very much as if this could be Rouge Noir. Why do I say it looks as if it could be? It's a black and white picture, so it's a bit difficult to tell. But what she also does on her YouTube channel is she shows different shades of nail polish, how they look in black and white, and she also does this experiment with the marker where she shows what it would have looked like, and she said you can see from the result it doesn't really look great, and she does not really think that this story with the marker really happened. And then linking it to the campaigns, she thinks it was unlikely that this shade really was created for those campaigns, not the runway shows, for the campaigns, and in the way that the tales always tell us the story. So the first challenge is different timelines. We can't really pin down the exact date. Sometimes the articles or even the information itself contradicts each other, so this makes it challenging. And the second challenge is that we have no real proof for the story with the marker, and there is even an interview with Heidi Moravec herself where she said in that interview that yes, Karl Lagerfeld asked them to make a nail polish quickly, but she and Moncourtois mixed shades in the kitchen quickly for the runway show. And then afterwards, because that polish created such a hype, they created it in the lab. So she herself also did not mention this story. So I think we can assume if the story was really true, Moravec would also have told this story in an interview when she talked about it. And I found yet another version of the story, which is even less exciting. It shows how the business works. So in the mid-90s, so around 1994, there were also new regulatory requirements when it came to nail polish, and Chanel was changing also their formulas. So the Le Vernis line was developed, and basically within that article they say that also the Rouge Noir was part of this whole experiment. I'm not going to bore you with the details. They basically changed some ingredients to comply with these new regulatory requirements. According to this article, this new nail polish line was developed in systematized mixology sessions. So again, this is nothing that sounds particularly sexy when it comes to product storytelling. And Moncourtois and Moravec were part of these sessions, and they worked with colorists. And to achieve this particular shade of black red, or this very dark shade of red, they mixed together some ingredients that are actually not supposed to be mixed together. But because the result was so great, the lab then looked into it further, and then they developed these exact shades by using ingredients that you can mix together. So we see this is not the most exciting story in terms of storytelling. This marker story is much more interesting. There's so much more allure to it because we can envision the whole story. So I think there's a reason why Chanel probably never said this actually did not happen, why they kept it a bit vague. Now, what actually happened? I assume what is true is the time pressure aspect. I think Lagerfeld had this idea. He wanted a new shade of nail polish in a very dark color. And then he said they have to create it quickly. So Moravec and Moncourtois mixed that particular shade. I do think it's likely that it was for the runway show for the fall-winter 1994 ready-to-wear collection. Because when you look at footage of this particular runway show, you see that the models wear a dark shade of nail polish, which looks like the Rouge Noir. So maybe this was this prototype. One thing I could not solve is timeline related, because on the official website of Chanel, in the section about their history, they say they launched the Rouge Noir officially in 1995. But if it was really then made for this collection in 1994 and it went into production after that runway show, it was 1994, and there are also articles and magazines where beauty editors promoted that particular shade of nail polish already in 1994. So what is unclear to me is why the company Chanel says it was officially launched in 1995. This is a mystery where I may need your help. If you know more about this, please let me know in the comments below. Rouge Noir means red black, but it was actually not always called Rouge Noir. It was actually called Vamp. And this is another fact that contributes to a bit of confusion around this particular shade of nail polish. Heidi Moravec said in an interview that they quickly developed this shade of nail polish and then also went into production fast. And then she says they called it Vamp because it went so fast. I don't know who she was referring to with they, maybe the team for launching the products. I don't know who she really meant. But fact is that for a very long time, Rouge Noir was actually called Vamp. And as far as I understood all the different articles and some also contradicting each other, Vamp was used first for the American market. Rouge Noir was used for Europe and other countries, even though it was the same shade back then. The problem is that I don't have an original shade of Rouge Noir and Vamp to compare them, because it goes back 3 decades and it's a challenge to find nail polish from that time. But then I also found blog posts by beauty bloggers from about 10 years ago, and these bloggers looked into Vamp and Rouge Noir, and I found pictures where they compared those two shades to each other, and Rouge Noir is the Rouge Noir as we know it. Vamp had a bit of glitter in there, it was a bit lighter, but what was interesting is that they both used the same number 18. So maybe Vamp was available also in Europe at the time and Rouge Noir also in America, or vice versa, or they still separated the two colors. The fact is, I tried to look into it because some people said you can still buy Vamp, the shade, but I can't. Maybe this is because I am shopping on the European websites. I can only buy Rouge Noir on the official website of Chanel. I did find some shades of Vamp on eBay, but from what I can say from the European perspective of the websites, at the moment we can only get Rouge Noir in Europe. My question to you is now, if you are in the US, can you get Vamp, or was it discontinued? I assume it was discontinued and it's only Rouge Noir now, but if I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments below. A very popular myth around Rouge Noir is that Uma Thurman wore it in Pulp Fiction. This is a fact that most of the articles will give you when you search for Rouge Noir. Most of them say, by the way, this is the shade that Uma Thurman wore in Pulp Fiction. It may be nice and it may be great if she really wore it, because she stands for a certain type of woman who also corresponds to this ideal of what Rouge Noir represents. But the problem is that we actually don't know, because until today, neither the film crew nor Chanel have ever confirmed this fact. I also then looked at pictures and also the movie and tried to see the shade, and it looks a bit lighter. The problem is it may be the filter, so we can't really tell from that. But what we can do is we can analyze the timelines and see Was it possible that this Rouge Noir was really used for the movie? So it can be assumed Rouge Noir was created for the runway show Fall/Winter 1994, ready to wear. This runway show happened in March 1994. The movie Pulp Fiction was first presented in Cannes in May 1994, and it went into the theaters on the 14th of October 1994. So yeah, we could say, oh yeah, this works. Actually, it doesn't, because when you look into the production time of Pulp Fiction, you will see that that movie was filmed in the time period roughly from September until November 1993. So unless that particular shade of nail polish was made for the Spring/Summer 1994 collection, which was presented in October 1993, and there was an overlap, then maybe it's possible that this nail polish was really worn by Uma Thurman in Pulp Fiction. But given these timelines, and that we can most likely pin it down to the Fall/Winter 1994 collection in March 1994, it is actually unlikely that Uma Thurman already wore Rouge Noir. I'm sorry if I have to disappoint you. I actually think it was a lucky coincidence for Chanel that that movie came out roughly at the same time when they launched Rouge Noir, because it corresponded to the same beauty ideal, to the same type of woman, the femme fatale, the vamp, as the name says. So I think they may have never said anything about it. Chanel may never have said, oh, we did not supply this shade of nail polish for the movie, because they actually benefited from the fact that Uma Thurman may or may have not worn that nail polish. And the New York Times, in their obituary for Heidi Moravec, they also said it was kind of a coincidence. It looks a bit as if the stars aligned, and maybe also Chanel, and in particular Karl Lagerfeld, they were already onto a trend. And we know that Lagerfeld was always very early when it came to overall trends, and maybe he already felt something is brewing. Maybe the beauty ideal will move towards these femme fatale, the vamps, and he needed a nail polish or a makeup line corresponding to this new beauty ideal. Why was Chanel's Rouge Noir such a big success? It was also the times, because in the 1990s, nail polish colors were a bit limited in terms of what was deemed acceptable and also what was accessible for that reason. Most of the nail polish colors were in red shades, pink shades, nude or blush tones, so it was very limited. And this particular shade of nail polish was a revolution in terms of colors. It was so dark. It also stood for a completely different woman. The woman who wears Rouge Noir is probably a woman where a lot of mothers would not really like to see their boys dating these women, but women felt empowered to wear Rouge Noir. It was kind of goth, but it was also kind of empowering. It showed that you wanted to look different, that you didn't want to conform. And this color, of course, polarized, because on the one hand, it was this daring, outrageous color. At the same time, it was created by an authority. It was created by Chanel, a leader in fashion, and they made it acceptable to wear this color. So we have this duality of this nail polish shade. And part of the success, of course, was that celebrities wore that color, but I also think it was because it polarized. A lot of people said this is too goth, it is for the Addams family, the mother of the Addams family would wear that shade, but I think women really didn't care. They wanted to send a different signal, and this made this particular shade of nail polish so successful until today. And it really polarized. Even I remember in the early 2000s, I loved to wear Rouge Noir. It was such an interesting color for me. I still love to wear it. And then I still remember that incidents. I must have been like 16 or 17, and we were all out in a bar. And then one of the guys said to me, this nail polish color is actually too dark for you. And then I remember I got so upset, thinking like, who is this guy to tell me what I can wear or what I cannot wear? And then I just replied, but I like it. I think it's perfect for me. And I think this is the essence of Rouge Noir, that you as a woman can decide what you deem appropriate for yourself, what you want to wear. And I think this was also this overall trend in fashion, that the femme fatale, the vamps became more fashionable. It's also reflected in Pulp Fiction and Uma Thurman. She was a very different kind of woman. I remember so many people then also copied her haircut. So there was something brewing also in terms of trends. Rouge Noir, being this tiny nail polish, was such a big success in terms of business for Chanel. Heidi Moravec said in an interview immediately after that runway show, they got the call. So many people wanted to have that particular shade, so they had no other choice than producing it. And then it was also really sought after by celebrities. For example, Madonna famously wore this particular shade in her video for Take a Bow. Then we also have Nicole Kidman, who wore it when she promoted her movies. And then there's another tale around Demi Moore. Obviously, she really wanted to have that particular shade of Chanel's nail polish, and she couldn't get it, so she bought the testers. Again, this is a story we can't 100% confirm, but we see it was really, really popular. Also, celebrities promoted it because they found it so great. So we could say in today's terms that it was a clever influencer strategy. So it was one of the products that immediately sold out once Chanel put it on the market. And because of this hype, there was then also a shortage of this product because Chanel could not produce it fast enough. So many people wanted to have it. There were even wait lists for that particular nail polish. And what happened was that beauty editors then promoted alternatives. So of course, this was a hugely successful product. Other beauty companies or nail polish companies then also started to produce similar shades. So we have the fake Rouge Noir, and at the time the editors actively also promoted those alternatives. This was not common at the time. We are used to this now, but this was very early on in this development that they also promoted the alternatives, and until today there are still so many like similar Rouge Noirs by so many other companies. So this was also kind of a side effect of the hype around the original Rouge Noir by Chanel. And the business perspective behind this particular product is also very interesting because who was targeted with this nail polish? Also women who could not afford Karl Lagerfeld's ready-to-wear haute couture collections could buy a piece of Chanel. And this is what I say so often, that the nail polish has become a business case because the aspirational customer, those customers who don't have the budget of the core client of luxury brands, can buy a nail polish. At the time when it was launched, Rouge Noir cost around $17 US. Today it's $33 US. So by paying $33 US, you can purchase a piece of Chanel without having to afford a Chanel jacket. And it was also the first time that the nail polish took center stage. It was the first time that the nail polish was not an afterthought for a fashion company. It was very much part of the whole collection. So this was a first, and until today this strategy has become so important for so many fashion and beauty brands that one particular product stands out and is also being promoted as a core product. And every hype also comes to an end. And there's this famous episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I think it was in 1997, where she's being asked about her views on certain topics, and she's being asked about Vamp, Rouge Noir, and she says over, and then the two girls agree, yeah, it's so over. Maybe this is the American view that in 1997 it was already over. I think in Europe it may have lasted a bit longer, or at least in Austria. I'm not sure about this, but I think it has become a classic in terms of nail polish colors. It is still part of the product portfolio of Chanel, and I would like to know what you think about this. Do you also think it is still a classic? Do you wear Rouge Noir regularly? Let me know in the comments below. And also let me know if you knew about this backstory of Rouge Noir. Did you know about its history? And do you think that this marker story is actually true? And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget two very simple things. First of all, please like my video, and also please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. If you prefer to read about fashion, I have many articles on thepinklookbook.com, and if you have time, you can also check out my fashion label Pelargona. And if you enjoyed this video about an iconic Chanel product, I have another very interesting video for you about Coco Chanel herself. Thank you very much for watching this video, and see you in the next one.